Hey, it's John. Thanks for joining us again. I'm pleased to be joined today by Dr. Jenss Bartenschlager. He is the co-founder and CEO of Fidectus, and he's here to tell us all about the company and how it came to be. Hi there, Jenss. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you. Hi, John. How are you?
Great. I hadn't heard a lot about Fidectus in the past, but you're actually a Swiss FinTech company, and I was hoping you could quickly introduce what Fidectus is, and then we'll get into a few questions about the company and yourself, okay?
Absolutely. So actually, yes, we are a Swiss company. Nevertheless, we solve a global problem. So what we do is we actually revolutionize the post-trading process in over-the-counter energy trading. And I'm going to tell a bit more what that means later on. So basically, we connect market participants, enable them with the tools we have in place to better manage their working capital.
Sounds very interesting, and I'm looking forward to getting into the details of that. But before we dive into more about the company, Jenss, why don't we start with a little bit of a personal intro? Can you tell us a bit about your background and career?
Sure, absolutely. So I did study business administration, information systems back at the time, and then I became a consultant. And actually, I did start in the energy industry right away. And since about 16 years, I'm working in the energy industry. Before founding Fidectus, purely as a consultant. In spaces like the risk function of an energy trader, and back the time in 2005, I didn't even know what risk management was. Whereas as of today, I would consider myself more of an expert. And the second part is the back office finance part. So everything that comes after that, I'm going to tell you a bit more about the connections there. And last job I did before co-founding Fidectus, was actually leading the energy and utilities consulting practice of PwC Switzerland.
I wanted to ask about what was the formation of the company? Where were you inspired? I guess that had a little bit to do with where you were in your career and what you saw in the markets. Can you tell us how the company vision started to form?
Absolutely. So the problem isn't new, right? We're not solving something that hasn't existed beforehand. So this problem became visible very early in the 2000s, and there was quite a number of smart people that tried to solve it already, but it simply wasn't the time yet. So traders made a lot of money. There was other things to be prioritized first. For example, when the financial crisis came, there was a lot of regulatory reporting things to do. Or earlier, it wasn't about efficiency yet. It was about even making more money in energy trading. However, in 2015, actually, after doing a lot of projects around this specific problem, the settlements part in the OTC trade life cycle, I had met a former client of mine for a nice dinner and a couple of glasses of wine. And we literally thought about what else could we do around all those efficiency projects. Is there something we missed out? Is there some innovation we missed out? And we identified this little part of the deal life cycle and wanted to close that gap. So first ideas actually were developed on a napkin that evening.
And Jenss, what actually is the business model, or how did the company form a product and service around this? How does it work per se?
So to answer that, I probably need to tell you a bit more about what we did beforehand. So over the last few years, actually, we tried to solve this problem, or trying to solve this problem, solving it in the meanwhile for the past 6 years. So even before the company was founded, we put a lot of effort and energy, as well as build prototypes of the product, put a lot of effort into that. And what it actually does is, imagine you are trading in the market. You need to find a counterparty that is interested in your products, let's say electricity or gas or something else that creates that's in the energy space in the end. And you originate and we execute that deal. After you and I agreed to that deal, we double check that we have the same terms captured in our systems. That's called a confirmation. That's where we come in slowly. Then you do all the work you need to do, and I do all the work I need to do. And in the end, after I deliver you, for example, electricity, a physical good in some place in the market, I want to get my money from you, right? And since I do this hundreds of thousands of times a month, and you do this hundreds and thousands of times a month as well, you need to double check that what I expect of you is what you actually expect of me. That's where we come in. So imagine documents with hundreds of thousands of deals that were closed in the past that have been delivered now, and they need to be reconciled. But before this is actually possible, you need to digitize it. And in today's world, I would send you a piece of paper or a PDF attached to an email. And you again would either do it manually, means look into your system and compare it to what's on that PDF or paper, or you would try to some kind of get it digitalized again to proceed with that process. So however, this takes quite some time, it's cumbersome. So, and if there is a dispute, means there is a deviation, we'd need to get back on the phone or talk via email, speak via email on what the problem actually is and how we actually solve it. So it doesn't sound very sexy in the first place, but that's the problem we solve as a first step. So we digitize and automate that. And by doing though, obviously, we can speed up the process on behalf of our clients and do a lot more things. I'm going to tell you about that in a few minutes.
I was hoping, can you tell us a little bit about the technology that goes in to make your solution possible? I mean, you've mentioned there are some regulatory changes and, of course, the competitive dynamics of your market area, but what technology are you actually putting together to bring about your solution?
So the beauty is we could build this from scratch as a greenfield approach, basically. So we understood the problem really, really well. We developed a minimal viable product a couple years ago with a market already. We just needed to build it. So the technology is based on the cloud, purely based on the cloud. So it's massively scalable and based on RESTful APIs. That means it's an easy connection possible for our clients from their legacy source systems towards our platform.
It's amazingly straightforward and flexible. I hear this time and again about such a setup, so I won't spend a ton of time on that. Maybe to get into a bit more of the details of how you've actually pursued the project. You've given us some hints, but could you talk more specifically about how you were able to fund the company and then grow it over the last couple of years since you got started with it?
So we took it forward from the initial discussion during that dinner, right? Marcus then took it forward to the industry and pushed an industry standard, because the industry understood this is the first hurdle to take. You need to have a standard, common language all systems speak. Based on this, there is less risk for anybody involved. And I, at the same time, would take our initial thoughts and validate it against our assumptions with the industry. So I spoke to large traders, to small traders, pretty much across all jurisdictions I was working in. What we did is I, as a consultant, had the chance, had a great opportunity to take it forward at my former employer in the space of their digitization strategy. And I said, why would I do this? And they said, well, we're going to fund you the different milestones, right? Because we believe in great new business models. So that's where this all started out in 2017, 2018. We refined it, a viable product with the industry. The industry came with a vision. Right? We simply built the tools to fulfill that vision. Whereas the probably best day in my consulting life was when I was able to pitch that business model to the board there, and I actually got a thumbs up. And just about 2 weeks later, we came to the conclusion that my former employer, being an auditor, can't really implement the business model due to all the conflicts of interest we figured out with the regulatory agencies and our lawyers. So that was the point where I needed to make a decision on how to bring this forward. So what we did there is we bought out the IP and founded a completely independent company called Fidectus. And so we had a product in place when the standard came out in March, April 2019. We had a full business model and could take it from there. So the initial seed round was pretty easy to get it raised.
And before we talk more about the future, can you tell us what's the traction been like now that you're out in the market and you're developing the business? Where exactly are you focused, and what sort of client business are you already engaging in?
So I said we had a working product very early. I brought an example how it looked like back in early 2019, and you will see the difference to nowadays. But what we did there was we started a pilot. And we had a handful of members, one of the largest energy traders in Europe, actually, that were willing to do the pilot with us. And they would also do some payments to be a participant. what we did is we developed further developed the product together with them. So the people that would work in that space, in that process, every day helped us to build the best user experience, user interface out there. So this took a year, around about a year. And then meanwhile, we have more than a dozen users on the platform. And there's some kind of a network effect starting now. So to cut a long story short, it is market validation's been successful very early. And now we are even in a position to have a great product that's being used, commercially used since April last year.
Congratulations, Jens. Where do you see this going in the next couple of years? What's your vision for, say, 1, 3, 5 years out with the company?
So we want to do focus on Europe in 2021. Nevertheless, there is already measures taking place to enter new markets, for example, North America and Asia. So we're going to take this globally. There's a couple of products in addition to settlements we have developed in the meanwhile that we are releasing shortly as well. The same underlying principle pretty much. As for settlements, confirmations is one, for example, I mentioned earlier, because there was a lot of demand suddenly in the market where players engaged us and asked us if we cannot apply the same technology and logics as we do for settlements in the space of confirmations. So that's what we did. And we are also going to add additional commodities, not only in the energy space, but also in additional commodities that are being traded over the counter in a global manner.
And what about when it comes to fundraising? It sounds like you have clear business development plans and the technology behind that evolves as things grow. Are you planning to raise additional financing for the company? Is there a vision of this maybe one day being a larger organization or an exit for you and the team? How do you even think about these things just yet?
Absolutely. So I can't give you one answer for all these questions. It comes as it comes. But yeah, we've had a couple of very successful funding rounds. We are at the point that we have institutional investors. We're talking to additional institutional investors to take this global. Obviously, it's quite capital intensive. So to give you one example, in the FinTech space, there is, for example, specific security things we have to meet. So we made a decision to also get certified for certain standards like ISO. So that's what we do in the meanwhile. And that not only means you just get a certification, that means you have a proper organization, you have a proper process, proper governance, and everything like that in place. So yes, there will be additional funding rounds to make this vision global.
I'm looking forward to seeing how the company develops, and it sounds like it will be an exciting few years ahead. And I'm actually really keen to see it, which we'll do in just a second. But before we move on, are there any final messages you'd like the audience to keep in mind about Fidectus?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So if you think about OTC trading and you see Fidectus, think about the most efficient way you can do post-trading, comparable to exchanges, but still OTC for any commodity out there.
Great, we will do that. What about a demonstration? Do you have something you can show us?
Absolutely.
All right, I'll flip over and you can take the lead, okay? Here we go.
So what you see here is one of the very, very early prototypes, and that's around about March 2019, where we had a product in place already. So no worries, the backend was there, it was working great already. So if it comes to the matching engine, things like that, it was very mature already. But this was the user interface. So well, today now I can see that most people were not really that happy about it back at the time. And what we see here is how it looks like as of today. So as said, we did put a lot of effort into the user experience to make it fun and to make it as easy as possible and as intuitive as possible to actually use it. So the record there is a settlement analyst who has never seen the interface figure out in 2 minutes how to use it. So I'd say that that's the goal we wanted to achieve. So you don't have to do time-consuming trainings that actually really bore you. You can just learn by using it. And if you get stuck somewhere, there's support gadgets that answer your questions, or you simply send us a message or our support desk a message, and they help you out. However, what you see here initially is what we call the dashboard. We developed that together with our clients as well. It gives a lot of KPIs, a lot of information where they are in the process. So let's get back to the example earlier. This what continuously happens here is that you receive documents and that you send documents, even though it's purely electronically now. You have a great overview of what's going on currently and in what state these documents are. That simply means everything that's green, all good, I can forget about it, but what's not green, I should have a second look at it, and what's red, I definitely need to look into it, because there is a dispute to be managed. Around that, there are certain statistics. How long did it take an average to solve disputes? How long did it take an average to match documents, things like that. We also have trends. People can look into how many documents, deals did come in and did go out at what point in time. And there are statistics around mismatches. In the system here, I have a lot of test data, so please consider that when I show you specific examples. You can drill into literally everywhere in the user interface. So let's see, I want to see the 10 mismatched documents that are incoming. Here you can see there is a little statistic about what happened in the last period. So I have 10 more incoming documents than in the last period because there were none. But let's click on it. What it does, it takes me to another screen. We call that the document screen. That's the primary screen settlement analysts, for example, work in. And it shows me all the mismatched documents in that specific settlement period with the status mismatched and the direction incoming. When I click on a specific one, I actually can see the representation of it as well. There's pretty much two representation modes. One is more data-oriented, like the one you see here. And let me show you another one that is more user-oriented. Means that's what business users very much prefer. That's it. It looks like a common settlement document containing all the information required, with quite a number of positions in that case, with all the necessary information they would be looking for. In any of the screens, you can go ahead and filter and display columns. So if there is an additional column I want to display, let's say commodity, it appears up here and I can filter by it. So very easy to proceed with. Let's say the earlier case I explained, if there is a deviation, what do? We call this a mismatch. It appears in red. Once it appears, both counterparties of both parts of this contract are being notified. They can go ahead and log into the platform. By the way, with the deep integration, they don't even need to do this. So it is possible to integrate it into the source legacy systems in a way that you never need to log into the platform. But let's assume they do so. What they see is the result. There is also two views. This view is the document view, and wherever there is a difference, it's highlighted red. And if I go over it with my mouse hover effect, it shows me what the other side is actually expecting. And there is another view. We call it the matching statement view. And it does show you a comparison of the two documents. So on the left-hand side here, we have the invoice, a legal document, and on the right-hand side, we have a purchase order. And it shows things like payment dates, VAT rates, net amounts, and so on. And these are actually compared. And that's the basis for defining if there is a match, a mismatch, or a tolerance match. So for example, here is a slight difference of, I think, around about not even 200 euros, and that's within tolerance in that specific case. So it's actually highlighted green. Whereas we have a massive difference in the gross amount. That's because it's highlighted red. At the same time, it shows the users why this is the case on a line item level, so on a deal level. Here, for example, we have a price of 55 euros expected from the seller, the supplier, and 54 euros expected from the buyer side, the customer side. Multiplied with the same volumes, we see a different net amount. That's what causes the mismatch here. They can now go ahead and start a chat, exchange additional information, do whatever needs to be done to efficiently solve that specific problem. the great thing here is, and that would take too much time to show you today, this also works with counterparties that are not yet adapting the standard, nor even doing this in any way digital. Because the platform verifies if the counterpart is using it or is using another supplier via interoperability. And if this is not the case, it triggers, for example, a message to the counterparty as the counterparty is used to it as of today, with documents attached, the standards in XML, for example, or an additional PDF created by the platform. And they can continue with their process as they do nowadays, but they could also register for the platform. There's a free community edition. They could answer back that email. So there is actually a chat going on, whereas our client is applying this one process end to end with an underlying audit trail and doesn't need to leave the platform. And they can also do match via email. There's a lot of things to make this possible. And on top of that, and that's something I want to show you really quick before we head on, there is so-called automated netting statements. So in the industry, as most participants are trading, means they buy and sell energy to quite substantial extent. So we have clients that have a monthly turnover of more than 10 billion euros. And you can imagine they don't only sell, but they also buy. To reduce the overall exposure, risk exposure, because it's always about anticipating the potential default of your counterparty, they apply netting as of today, which is kind of cumbersome as well. And we do this close to real-time ad hoc based on the underlying data. Means each of the settlements they have agreed to in an automated manner or in a manual manner goes into that if they have an agreement in place on the platform. There's loads and loads of additional features, but certainly too much to show now. So what this means to our clients is suddenly a manual and cumbersome process becomes fully automated, fully digital. What that means is currently, because it is the way it is, smart people in the industry have agreed to settlement schedules. So, for example, the European Federation of Energy Traders, they provide legal templates, which the industry, for example, in Europe, applies for physical energy trading in the space of electricity and gas, for example, or emissions. And these say that after the month you deliver, for example, gas or electricity, you settle. And the settlement process takes a couple of days. Actually, everything has to be paid by the 20th. So the industry said, well, if this is automated, why wait 20 days until the payment occurs, right? It's 20 days of unnecessary exposure, unnecessary settlement or risk exposure. Let's get rid of that. And why not go ahead and settle earlier in the month of the delivery? There are certain products where you can actually do this. So a daily delivery, for example, which adds an average around about 15 days to that equation. So we end up at 35 days of potentially reducing this credit. And believe it or not, it's not only about receiving money earlier for certain clients, for example, to get back to the limits, means they can trade against a certain counterparty again. It's also for a few of them about paying earlier. So why is that? That's because of negative interest rates. And if this is millions and hundreds of millions we're talking about a month, it makes a difference when you actually pay and or receive money of your counterparties. And from there, we took it even a couple steps further. We do things like multilateral netting, which further reduces the overall cash transferred back and forth between participating traders. And we do things like discounting. So let's say you don't agree with your counterparty on reducing the settlement schedule because they have different interests. You can still make a decision on receiving your money earlier or paying your money earlier, as we are working with partners to make this possible.
I have to say, Jens, I find it really fascinating. Energy markets are a really interesting space, and I know very dynamic. It's amazing to hear the type of efficiency you're bringing, so I'm curious to see how it goes forward. I was also wondering, what do you see as being the major challenges to developing this business and your vision for the market as you go forward?
So major challenges is usually, you can imagine if you're in a dance club, dancing yet, you're waiting for the first ones to dance. Once that's the case, everybody wants to join, right? We are at that point where we have a couple of parties dancing in the market already, and there will be a vast majority of people following very soon. What we expect this point to happen in 2021, so kind of a tipping point.
Okay.
And we simply need to be there to support that growth, because when it comes to the tipping point, it's going to go fast. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find the way disruption tends to work, and especially with platforms, it's a bit like you say, being at a dance club or a concert and getting people to shift over onto the floor or to start moving in a different way. And there's always a bit of a tipping point if it works successfully. I found this a really interesting discussion. I want to make sure we don't run too long. Are there any final messages, Jens, that you want to leave people with?
Absolutely. So if you heard about this first time or second time, or if you heard about it a couple of times, doesn't really matter. You always have the chance to demo it or get test access to the platform, and get your own informed data set to make an informed decision.
Great. Well, again, Jens, thanks for the demo and for giving us a whole deep dive into what Fidectus is up to. I look forward to catching up in the next year or so to find out how everything has gone and hear about some more milestones. So thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, John. It was great joining. Looking forward to our next conversation.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.